Hey y'all, Matt here with another Bible study video, and we're continuing this series talking about Disney and what we can learn from Disney about the Bible. And today we're going to talk about one of my favorite rides, one of the most famous rides in Epcot, and what this ride can actually teach us about the Bible and how it was developed. And this ride is Spaceship Earth. But before we get into this, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends. But Spaceship Earth, if you're not familiar with Spaceship Earth, if you've never been there, Spaceship Earth is a ride at Epcot. It's located in the big sphere at the front of the park, probably one of the most iconic Disney skylines that there is. And this ride basically shows how innovation continued from the writing of information on cave walls basically to the invention of computers to get us to where we are today in technology. But when I rode this, one thing that stood out, and I had to go on it multiple times, it's probably one of my favorite rides, but the Bible nerd in me kicked in because I started hearing stuff and recognizing it from the development of the Bible. The first such scene is we basically see an Egyptian who's surrounded by reeds, and he's pounding what looks like paper flat with some kind of a stone tool. And this is actually the ancient process, and it tells you in the ride, of making papyrus. And papyrus was basically a plant or a reed that grew all around the Nile River. So the Egyptians probably would have had an abundance of it. So there's no, it's no surprise that they would use it to make paper, that somebody would figure this out. And what they would do, just like this figure in this ride's doing, they would basically stomp it flat into almost like a paper, and then they would write on it with a mixture of stuff that they would use to make ink. And it was kind of like paper, but it didn't have all the good qualities of our paper, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the oldest known papyrus documents were actually from like 2500 BC that we know about today. So we actually have some really old ones that are still in existence. And this is what a lot of the earliest manuscripts of the Bible were written on. And this is also why a lot of those autographs or the original copies don't exist today, because they were rolled into scrolls to try to keep them because of their size, but it didn't preserve well because it is a reed, and over time reeds dry out. It would get really brittle and it would crack and break. And you know this if you've ever dried out any kind of plant or anything in a book or anything like that. Eventually it just falls apart. And the same thing happens from papyrus. As we continue on the ride, we actually see a guy that's sitting there, and he's actually reading what appears to be a book, but he's got some of these scrolls next to him. And this is kind of in the limbo between these two eras, because these actual books came after the papyrus. And basically what these were in the 1st century BC, that people started figuring out they could make parchment. And all parchment was basically paper made of animal skins. And it was a lot better because while it would dry out as well, it wasn't as brittle as the papyrus or any kind of reed or plant or anything like that. And so what they quickly found out was they didn't have to roll it in a scroll anymore, because they didn't have to worry about it getting brittle and breaking. And they could actually cut it into pages and make what they called codices, which are actually kind of like books. And this is what we see him opening and reading on this ride. And he's still got some of the old scrolls next to him, but this is the next form of technology that the Bible followed, is these codices. And then as the ride progresses even further, we're going to see probably one of my favorite scenes in the Spaceship Earth ride is two monks that are basically making copies of these old documents. And this is how the Bible would have been translated, and this is what we see in the New Testament when Jesus is talking about scribes. This is what the scribes did. They were basically these highly trained men that sat there and they hand copied these manuscripts, and that's how they got their copies, because they didn't have printers yet. The best part about this part is one of them is awake and one of them is sleeping, but the sleeping part is probably pretty realistic, as it's a very monotonous work, and that also explains where most of the errors on our manuscripts that we have today occur. We have thousands of manuscripts of the Bible, and they only differ ever so slightly. And almost 99% of these errors and or discrepancies between these manuscripts occur in scribal errors, like repeating the same word more than once, or maybe omitting a word, or maybe accidentally changing something. But actually, none of them really affect any of the meaning at all. They're just silly, like writing errors, scribal errors. And the coolest thing about this ride is it progresses from these monks. We next see one of the biggest things that occurred in the spread of the scriptures, and that was the Gutenberg Press. This was created in 1450, and we see the Gutenberg Press. They're actually pressing out books on the ride, and one of the first books, or most famous books, that Gutenberg actually published on his press was the Gutenberg Bible. He made about 180 of them, probably, because it wasn't quite as fast as the printing presses that we have today, inkjet printers, but 180 was a lot. Think about how long it would take monks or scribes sitting there copying it by hand. So this was a lot. Only about 45 of these Gutenberg Bibles still exist today. And then it gets even cooler, because as it progresses from the press, we see how quickly after that information starts to spread, as they rapidly figure out more efficient ways of printing. And then we get the telephone, and then we get computers. And computers have changed the Bible and Scripture as well, because we no longer have to rely on the Gutenberg Press. We no longer have to rely on scribes to copy it over again. We can print out mass quantities of Bibles now, and that's why almost every store, Walmart, Target, bookstore, Amazon, anywhere you go just about sells Bibles. And Bibles are everywhere now. They're in drawers at hotels. Almost everybody in America has one. It's estimated that 5 billion copies of the Bible have been printed. And What's even crazier about this is as the technology has evolved, and at the end of the ride we see the technology of the computer developed, but the computer has even furthered this even more. Because all of us have a cell phone, even people in countries where Scripture is illegal. Sometimes they do things to block the Bible app and stuff like that, but all of us have access in the palm of our hand, a computer, and we can pull up the Bible in multiple hundreds of translations instantly. We can search the Bible, and it's just crazy that we have access to it the way that we do. But so next time you check out Spaceship Earth, next time you're in Epcot, ride it, take a look at these things, and think about Scripture and how it's developed over time, and how blessed we are to live in the time we do, when we have access to Scripture freely, where everybody can own a Bible, and we're not relying on a scribe or somebody to try to copy it for us. But I hope this video has been beneficial. If there's any other topics you'd like to see, please email me, text me. If you don't have a study Bible or a Bible at all, please get in touch with me. Even if you have a Bible and you want a better Bible, get in touch with me, text me, email me. If you're local, I'll put a study Bible in your hands. It's free, free of charge, don't charge anything. If you want one to give to a friend, same thing. Send me a message and I'll make sure you get one. But until the next video, I love you guys. Blessings.